Welcome to E-Bible Fellowship's Evening Bible Studies with your host and Bible teacher, Chris McCann. For more studies, visit our website at www.ebiblefellowship.org. And now, here's Chris McCann.
Hello and welcome to E-Bible Fellowship's Bible study in the book of Genesis. Tonight is study number 9 in Genesis chapter 40, and we're going to begin reading in verse 5. Genesis 40, verse 5. And they dreamed a dream, both of them, each man his dream in one night, each man according to the interpretation of his dream, the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt, which were bound in the prison. And Joseph came in unto them in the morning, and looked upon them, and behold, they were sad. And he asked Pharaoh's officers that were with him in the ward of his Lord's house, saying, Wherefore look ye so sadly today? And they said unto him, We have dreamed a dream. There is no interpreter of it. And Joseph said unto them, Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me them, I pray you. And I'll stop reading there. Okay, so we've been looking at this account concerning the butler and the baker cast into prison. They were officers, chief of the butlers, really, chief of the bakers, officers of Pharaoh. And now they're both in prison. And they have a dream. Each one in one night, they dream, and the dream causes them sorrow. They're sad. Why do you look so sadly? It was asked of them. And then Joseph comes and tells them, they said they were sad because there was no interpreter. So he points out interpretations belong to God, and indicates he can interpret their dream. Well, what is this talking about? We always have to remember it's the Bible. We're reading from the Bible. It's not some, secular, worldly history book telling us about historical events, although every historical event we read in the Bible is true, 100%. Perfectly accurate history, and it did happen the way the Bible describes it. Yet that's not the point or purpose of the Bible. The Bible's purpose is the gospel, or to teach the truth of God, to teach the spiritual meaning, the deeper spiritual meaning. That's what we're always interested in. We know Christ spoke in parables. Without a parable, he did not speak, and Christ is the Word. He's the Bible in essence. He was the Word made flesh. You can't separate him from the Word, and so all Scripture is profitable for doctrine. Doctrine is finding that spiritual understanding, the spiritual meaning. Then we learn, we're taught. And otherwise, we're just history buffs, as so many in the world are history buffs of history of the Old West or history of the Civil War. And we would just have our particular slice, and our interest would be Bible history, and it's slightly more profitable than it's still far more profitable than any secular history, but the point is there's a treasure trove, there's abundance of riches, more hidden in the history. And I don't think I have to point out again Galatians 4. Please read verses 22 through the end of the chapter, where God, moving the Apostle Paul, speaks of Abraham's two wives, Sarah and Hagar, and God says which things are an allegory, parable, another way of saying parable, and they represent two covenants. Well, we read about Sarah and Agar in the same book of Genesis, the same Bible, same book of Genesis. And we went through it verse by verse, and in the historical account didn't mention anything about an allegory, didn't say they represented a covenant, but you see, that was what was beneath. And if you follow the church's hermeneutic, you skim right over it and you miss it. And because their hermeneutic is not a proper biblical hermeneutic, it's a hermeneutic guaranteed to empty the Bible of its glory and its power and its honor. But here, first thing we want to think of, because the dreams are taking center stage, the big focus is on the dreams. In much of the life of Daniel, actually, Daniel 37, he dreamed two dreams concerning his brethren and parents. Then soon Pharaoh will dream, and Joseph will be called out of prison to interpret Pharaoh's dreams. So Joseph's life is wrapped around dream, or the Lord just completely involves him with dreams from his beginning, now in prison, and then later called out of prison, and the rest of his life is a result of the interpretation of those dreams, the interpreting of the 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine following. It caused Pharaoh to lift him up and make him second in command in Egypt, and it changed his whole life. So dreams are very important in the Bible, and we do know this, that God used dreams as another way, another mode of delivering divine revelation. He could simply speak audibly to his servants, the prophets, and give them his word that way, or he could cause them to have a vision, like Ezekiel, who was lifted up and had this spectacular vision, or even the book of Isaiah. We read in Isaiah 1 verse 1, that says, as soon as I get there, Isaiah 1:1, the vision of Isaiah the son of Amoz, which he saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem in the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah. So the whole book of Isaiah is a vision. It's a vision. And yet it's scripture. It was the way God brought divine, and divine means from God. He is the divine one. Divine revelation. God revealed these things to Isaiah through visions, other prophets through visions. And with Joseph, it was in particular the dream. And it wasn't always Joseph who dreamed, but God gave Joseph the ability to interpret dreams. And so he could interpret the butler, the baker, Pharaoh later. And, just an interesting side note, that often when God gives dreams, he, the one who receives the dream is often not saved. Like Pharaoh, King Nebuchadnezzar with Daniel received dreams. Daniel interpreted. Nebuchadnezzar, definitely not a saved man. Abimelech of the Philistines, we read earlier, I think around Genesis chapter 20, he received a dream from God. He wasn't a saved man, and so forth. So So in this case, with the butler and baker, it's probable that neither of them were truly saved. It's possible maybe the butler was, but unlikely. We're dealing with the Old Testament, and very, very few people were saved in the Old Testament. But the butler can be used, or any unsaved individual could be used as a type and a figure of Christ, perhaps, or of the elect children of God. That's possible. And the baker gives every indication of being an unsaved man, and he had the negative interpretation, or the interpretation, it wasn't good for him. Let's put it that way. It ended up being an interpretation that he was going to die. But what do these dreams represent? Why is God giving, moving in the lives of even unsaved people, causing them to dream this particular dream? God is the one who gave these men these dreams, because it's written in the Bible. They are inspired, and all scripture is given by inspiration of God. God moved holy men of old to pen it, but when even wicked men would receive a dream from God, and it's recorded in the Bible, interpreted by Daniel or Joseph, that came from God. It came from God. And we'll look a little later, because I first want us to look at dreams, but this is something I just noticed. I'm not sure if you've ever noticed it, but notice the statement in verse 5, Genesis 40, verse 5. And they dreamed a dream, both of them, each man his dream in one night, each man according to the interpretation of his dream, the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt, which were bound in the prison. And if you read that carefully, you kind of go, what? What does that mean? Each man dreamed a dream, both of them, in one night. We understand that. Each one had a dream in one night, same night, they both dreamed. They had similar dreams. Similar, it had to do with 3. The number 3 appears in both. And yet there was differences. But they also had the similarity of dreaming a very intensive type dream. Something definitely troubled them about the dream. So they had that in common. But notice, each man, this about the middle of verse 5, each man according to the interpretation of his dream. Or, to say it another way, each man dreamed a dream according to the interpretation of his dream. Now, what does that mean? They don't have any interpretation of their dream. Joseph hasn't arrived. Joseph hasn't noticed their sadness. He hasn't offered any interpretation. Why are we told they dreamed a dream according to the interpretation of their dream? Well, it's actually a very, I think, significant answer to that question, but we're going to look at that later. Lord willing, we'll take a look a little later on. Right now, we want to look at the dreams themselves. What do dreams in the Bible represent, or what's the importance of these dreams? Well, let's go to Jeremiah 23. We'll start there. Jeremiah 23 and verse 27 and 28 It says, no, I'm sorry, I'm going to back up to verse 25. Jeremiah 23:25. I have heard what the prophets said that prophesy lies in my name, saying, I have dreamed, I have dreamed. How long shall this be in the heart of the prophets that prophesy lies? Yea, they are prophets of the deceit of their own heart, which think to cause my people to forget my name by their dreams, which they tell every man to his neighbor, as their fathers have forgotten my name for Baal. The prophet that hath a dream, let him tell a dream, and he that has my word, let him speak my word faithfully. What is the chaff to the wheat, saith Jehovah? And also verse 30, therefore, behold, I am against the prophets, saith Jehovah, that steal my words, everyone from his neighbor. Behold, I'm against the prophets, saith Jehovah, that use their tongues and say, he saith. Behold, I'm against them that prophesy false dreams, saith Jehovah, and do tell them, and cause my people to err by their lies and by their lightness. Yet I sent them not, nor commanded them. Therefore they shall not profit this people at all, saith Jehovah. You see here, God is speaking of prophets that prophesy by false dreams. They in verse 25, they prophesy lies in my name. Well, how they do that? How they tell people, or in what way do they tell people that this is a message from God? This is a word from God. Well, they say, I have dreamed. I have dreamed. I have dreamed. And you see, the Old Testament saints, the Old Testament people of God had a definite problem due to the fact that God was indeed breaking the barrier of the supernatural. He was coming to certain men and giving them a dream, as Joseph or Daniel, or he was coming to certain men and giving them a vision, like Isaiah, and he was speaking to certain men, like Moses. And the Bible was being put together. It was being compiled. God was actively writing it. And so he was breaking the supernatural barrier left and right, here and there, in generation after generation. The Jewish people, or the people of God at that time, as the nation of Israel was God's outward representative on the earth for its period of time. Well, the Jewish people had a big problem, because God could indeed, again, come to a man and give him word from God, and it was divine. It was scripture that had yet to be written down, and the prophet would declare it. Jeremiah or Ezekiel or Isaiah, Hosea, whoever would declare it to the people. And so now the people had to determine, is this a true word from God, or is this a false word from God? Because they had the same problem we have, false prophets. False prophets. Now in our day, we're greatly helped because God has completed the Bible, and actually he completed it quite a while ago. By the end of the 1st century AD, the Bible was finished, compiled. That's it. 66 books, Genesis through Revelation, and nothing more. And at the end of the Bible, the last book, Revelation, the last chapter of the last book, chapter 22, near the very end of that chapter, the Lord gave us the statement in Revelation 22, 17 through 19, Whoever adds unto the words of this book, the plagues written herein shall be added unto him. Whoever adds to the words of the Bible will come under the wrath of God, the author of the Bible. And in essence, what God did in Revelation 22:18, the close of the volume of the book, the canon was complete, was to set a seal upon it. Do not add, do not subtract. This is my holy word. It is complete, and it is to be received. This is my divine communication to you, the reader. And now that I have finished the Bible, I will cease all supernatural activity of bringing divine revelation. And that means ever since the first century, we're in the 21st century, so a long time ago, ever since God finished the Bible, then he will never come again through a dream. People say all the time, oh, I had this dream. God was telling me, and they take it as a word from God. That is not only false, it's lethal, it's deadly. You're adding to the words of God. No, God did not give you a word in a dream. You dream because you had bad tacos or a bad stew, or you have something on your mind you're trying to work out in your subconscious, and so you dream and had nothing to do with God. Now, you could have read the Bible, you could have heard someone preach, and so in your dream there were biblical concepts or ideas, but that is not God. God only communicates through the Bible. Likewise, people will say, oh, I had a vision. Oh, the Lord showed me a glorious vision. Oh, wonderful vision. Come, let me tell you. No, thank you. No, thank you. Keep your vision to yourself, because I know it's not from God. And more than that, if there was anything supernatural in a dream or a vision or anything like that, the only one still working in the supernatural realm is Satan. And Satan comes like an angel of light. He tries to impostor Christ. He comes using, concepts like God and Scripture, and of course he's an excellent theologian, and yet the child of God, the elect child of God, no, I don't want to hear it. I have no interest in it. I have the Bible. I am content. I am full. I have all I need. Thank you. Please do not tell me about your dream, your vision, or your tongue. The same thing for a short while at the Church of Corinth, the Lord brought divine revelation through tongues. And really, God just established that as a trap, an end-time snare for the carnal Christians of the apostate generation at the end of the church age, so they would run after it, and so they have. And tongues, 1 Corinthians 14 tells us, are for a sign, not for them that believe, but for them that believe not. In other words, it's a sign of an unbeliever. Falling over backwards, holy laughter, all these so-called supernatural things. Either it's fake, people are just doing it because everybody else is doing it. Let me raise my hands and mumble something. Or if there's anything truly supernatural, it's of Satan. It's of Satan. 100% biblically guaranteed. Revelation 22:18. The Bible, the still small voice. not very exciting, not very dramatic. We read of glorious, exciting, dramatic things in the Bible. The parting of seas, water coming from rock, David slinging a stone to slay a giant. We read of all these great events. We know the power and glory of God. And so we read about that, and then we want some of that. We want some of that. And yet God's plan for the New Testament era, wherein he would save overwhelmingly the vast majority of his elect people predestinated to obtain it, is rather dull, rather quiet. Over the church age, just sit in the pew and follow along if you had a Bible with the pastor's preaching at the end. Same thing. Electronic mediums spices things up a bit, but it's just basically studying words from a book, a divine, holy book, the greatest thing in all of existence, but still it's a book. It's a published volume. We hold it in our hands. Nothing jumps off the page. There's no movement of clouds or pillar of fire. It's still small voice, powerful voice, full of just greatness. It truly is a glorious thing when God opens the eyes of the sinner to the spiritual depths of meaning. The incredible wisdom and knowledge of God is on glorious display. Yet, when people of the world come, it's boring to them. It's dull. It's not fleshly. It's not carnal. It's all so slow to this instant pudding. Give me what I want when I want it. I can click here and click there, and so they adapt and they change the gospel. The professed Christians, not true Christians, the professed Christians that entered into the churches through the false gospels of easy believism, salvation, accepting Christ and so forth, they pervert the gospel and change it to something more suitable to the carnal desires of a spiritually dead sinner. Something they can see. You can see people jumping around. Got to change the music, get the rock music in. Got to change this, change that, have excitement. And it's all the workings of Satan. It is not the workings of God. So God works with his people in the methodology he has wisely chosen to work, something that is appealing not to the flesh, but to the spirit. Well, when we get together next time, we'll look a little bit more at what the Bible has to say about dreams. And here we saw false prophets use dreams to support their false prophecy, and we'll understand that a little better when we get together in our next Bible study.
Thank you for joining us for eBible Fellowship's Evening Bible Studies with your host and Bible teacher, Chris McCann. For more studies and information, visit our website at www.ebiblefellowship.org. Until our next Bible study, may the Lord's perfect will be done.